Hello, I'm Hermione Coburn and welcome to Resource Review here at the Science Museum in London. Now, our aim is to help you choose resources that are really useful for your subject. Today, our subject is primary literacy. And the resources that we're going to be looking at are The Storymaker's Chest, created by Pi Corbett and published by Philip and Tacey, and Cornerstones Writing, published by Cambridge University Press. Both of these resources deal with developing creative writing skills for primary literacy. Later, with the help of our expert panel, we'll be discussing how effective these resources are. But first, let's see them in action, starting with The Storymaker's Chest. This contains Pi Corbett's Teaching Creative Writing book, Story Starter Games, a Storymaker's Curiosity Bag, 2 Storymaker's banner posters, 80 Storymaker's playing cards, and story wheels. The chest is designed to stimulate pupils' learning through a range of tactile and visual resources. The chest is being tested by teacher Eloise Jordan at Emmanuel Primary School in London. Let's see how she gets on.
Well, I've got a little bit of help with my cooking up of a story, and that comes in the form of this poster. It's a recipe for a story. I used the story chest today just to develop characters, which actually came at a good time. My class have been working on narrative this week and their characters have been quite weak, so it was really good to develop their writing that way. It worked on talking and developing the character, so I used it for my children to develop their characters and to understand that you know more about your characters through what they say and do than whether they're wearing a baseball cap or whether their hair's long, short, all the other things that they've learnt further down the school. The step from description into actually understanding how a character is what Key Stage 2 children find quite hard. So you're going to have talk time for a minute now, thinking of interesting names. Mrs. Dread the teacher. I wonder if you could come up with something for the robber. Perhaps you've had some in other stories that you've read and listened to. 1 minute just to have a think of some interesting names. OK, off you go.
Story? Yeah. It's strong, it's feeling. You could fast.
It worked really, really well. The activities are activities, they're not new, but it focuses you back to using them, because sometimes you can forget what do I need to get them doing this? It's got lots of ideas to get you going again. So I want you to have a few moments with your partners thinking about these situations and acting them out. The Pi Corbett chest, I think, was really good and useful, and it could be used across the 2 key stages, even though it's for Key Stage 2. There's lots of things clearly to inspire children. The spinners to make decisions, the cards and the pictures, they're kind of typical children characters, but there's sort of a little edge to them that can get them thinking about something else. So it does what it says on the box, really, creative writing.
We've just seen The Storymaker's Chest, and to discuss it, we've got our Resource Review panel. With me today is Helen Wollstonecroft, our primary literacy expert, Adrienne Jones, a freelance educational consultant, and Simon Gibbons from De Montfort University. Helen, this strikes me as a very carefully designed resource. Do you think it's effective?
Yes, I think it has been put together very thoughtfully by Pi Corbett. There's a lot to use and do in this resource, and I think in terms of developing children's understanding of how to be a writer, it's absolutely fantastic from that point of view. It's supposed to just push children off into exploring the world themselves rather than actually leading them very specifically to a certain point. So there's a lot of space for the children to bring themselves into what they're doing, as well as just using the resources themselves.
Adrienne, what were your thoughts seeing The Storymaker's Chest in use there?
It would be a delight for children, that obviously they get a lot of pleasure out of having something tactile and something tangible to actually feel, so that it has a sensory experience for them. You could say, well, a teacher could actually create those things themselves. You could have a box, you could have cards, you could have spinners. But the plus point is that you get a very good book with it, which looks at narrative writing and actually lays out some rather good ideas, which aren't confined to a one structure only. So it gives you lots of creative possibilities, and I think that's what's good about it, that it gives you kind of unlimited creativity.
Simon, what did you think of the resource?
It looked really good from what I've seen of it. I mean, I think anything that focuses on creative writing starts off pretty high up in my book anyway. And I think what's good about that, as Adrian has said, is it doesn't say there's one method of structuring a story. It gives you options. You saw on the tape it encourages kids to work together and talk and role play and drama before they get onto writing. So there's all those things about imagination and creativity which I think are just fantastic, which seem that resource inspires, I think.
Thank you. Now let's look at our second resource, which is Cornerstones for Writing, published by Cambridge University Press. Originally published in March 2001, Cornerstones is now in its third reprint and is also available on CD-ROM. The Cornerstones series takes a 5-step approach to teaching writing. Cornerstones for Writing is being used by Lucy Thomas in her Year 5 class at the St Mary of the Angels School in Westminster. So let's see how she got on.
So what we're going to do today, we're just going to look at the whole package, the whole part of the play. My name's Lucy Thomas. I'm a senior teacher here at St Mary the Angels School, which is based in Bayswater in Notting Hill. All these things down here. We did a lesson on play scripts, and how to understand how a play script's written out and the importance of stage direction and stage actions. The resource I was using today is called Cornerstones for Writing. It's by Cambridge Press. It has levels from years 3 to year 6. It caters for all abilities and differentiation. It's got a teacher's book, which is this book here.
Well, George, let's play football. It's like you're exaggerating the consonants.
Yeah. You have in the teacher's book, you've got differentiation, and they tell you in here, for example, group 1, 2, 3, or they have red, green and blue group. So they've actually colour-coded for you for differentiation. Happily, angrily, crossly, shouting, sadly, fiercely, soothingly, furiously. It's got the children's book, which is actually possible to photocopy if you can't afford to get the whole lot. They suggest that you do 2 weeks. You do a week of planning and preparation, the second week of writing, which fits in very nicely with the actual QCA scheme of work. So what I like about this teacher's book is that it's self-explanatory. There are a lot of teachers throughout a big school or a mixed form school that change year groups, and it gives example of how to teach writing and throughout year 5. Why don't you read it through first? I think that would be a good idea, don't you? Do you think that would be a good idea? I think it would be a good idea to read it through to get the feel of it. It's very clear. I think the explanation of each task was clear, and that's what we all need. There's a lot to be covered, especially within the older year group. You've got, deadlines, we have with every year group, but, the pressure is on from 5 to 6, the SATs. Very clear, very prescriptive, all the objectives were covered, and it was very user-friendly. It's sick. Mina does it sick. Wow. Imagine getting up in the morning, mummy looking like that, and then
So we've just seen Cornerstones for Writing in use there in Lucy Thomas's classroom. Helen, what did you think?
My initial reaction was that actually it could be quite a supportive resource, but when I sort of looked into it a little bit further and looking at the clips there, I found it could be quite prescriptive actually in places, and I think the resource would be good if the teacher brought a lot to it and set it in a very broad and lively context. If it was just following the children's books and the teacher's books, I thought it could be quite dry in places.
Adrian, how effective did you think this resource was?
My feeling about it is that it was probably a very solid book from which you can get advice as a teacher, and it actually lays out a structure which you need to follow, but the concern is that, maybe it lacks a little bit of spice or interest or, just something to kind of get them going. and it could just be same old, although having said that, there were some pages that had been photocopied from it which the children were reading as part of the play. And I did actually quite like the fact that you could project onto the screen, you know, the pages of a play. So, and that's part of that package. But I think overall I had a few little toe curls.
Simon, what did you think?
I'd go along with what Adrian said, really. I mean, I think it looks to me like one of those resources which provides a lot of support, and if you want that kind of support, it's there for you. I think I'd want to see it as a starting point, and you don't want to reduce creative writing to a formula, because it isn't a formula. You need an air of mystery, you need an air of creativity. You don't want to mystify the whole process, so that's good to kind of demystify, but then you need to say to kids, but it's a starting point. I mean, where are you going to go with your imagination? Where can you take it? And I would worry perhaps that people rely too heavily on that kind of material, and you do end up with a kind of formulaic approach. So I think it looks good as a kind of support structure, provided you've got the confidence to go and move from it, I think.
Thank you. Now let's take a look at what other resources are out there for primary literacy. Helen, what's caught your eye recently?
The one I've really had a very great interest in recently has been Pen Pals for Handwriting from Cambridge University Press. It's really filled a gap in the market for a lot of primary teachers, and it's the first resource I've ever seen that actually shows you how to teach handwriting, which has been missing for such a long time. And the fact that it's been based on good early years practice and doesn't put the pencil in the children's hand too quickly, and then gets the children later to develop as fluid writers, to find their own style of handwriting to suit what they're doing, is absolutely fantastic. I've seen a lot of very happy children using that resource.
Great, it sounds like a really good one.
Yep.
Anything else?
I've recently gone back to looking on the Film Education website. I know the British Film Institute have got a lot of good resources on their website, and film education's maybe been a bit overlooked recently, but they still do provide some good quality activities based on children's favourite films that are out at the moment, and then it also leads you on to linked websites and some good quality resources that can be bought, as well as free ones that they'll send into school.
Thank you. So to recap, we've looked at two resources in the classroom today. The first was The Storymaker's Chest, created by Pi Corbett and published by Philip and Tacey. The second resource was Cornerstones Writing by Cambridge University Press. So Helen, out of those two resources, which one would you choose?
I'd have to choose the Pi Corbett Story Chest, purely because of the creative potential it has. There was a lot to offer in that chest, and particularly the way in which Pi Corbett opens out how the writing process takes place. It really did catch my imagination, and I think if you can capture the adult's imagination, then that's going to come across with the children that they're teaching.
So the resource review recommendation is The Storymaker's Chest. You can find details about all the resources featured on today's show by logging on to the Teachers TV website, teachers.tv/resource review. Or if you've got any queries, you can write to us, resourcereview@teachers.tv. So all that remains for me to do is to say thank you very much for our panel for taking part. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.